Hey everyone, TGIF, happy Friday. We made it. But one last conversation about the big IT Expo in Fort Lauderdale next week. Rich, Andy, how are you?
I'm
Great. How
great.
are
How about
you?
you, Rich?
Doing fantastic.
Living the dream. So Rich, you've been doing this a long time, organizing, managing events, IT Expo. What year are we in? It's been at least a couple decades.
Right. The first one was 1999. This is the 40th show. It was bi-coastal. Right now, it is one large show in South Florida annually. And like I said, this will be the 40th, so it's a big number.
40th. Well, happy 40th. And I'm super excited to be there, as is Andy, who's a legend in our industry. For those kids who aren't aware of that, Andy, maybe introduce yourself and a little bit about your background.
Well, I have the audacity to have been named one of the most influential people in voice over IP by Mr. Tarani about 9 or 10 years ago. I guess that I was at Expo 30 something that we did in Florida as well. So I'm looking forward to coming back to Florida. Been a regular on the circuit, both at IT Expo and other shows in telecom for many years. I occasionally write a blog called VoIP Watch, which is now part of andyabramson.com. And have been involved, more importantly, in about 57 exits to date, of which 25 or so are in telecom. And we'll talk about some of those a little later.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn about the business from your session at IT Expo. But before that, Rich, set the scene. I know you have a lot of people coming down to Fort Lauderdale, a lot of keynotes, a lot of vendors. Describe the community that's going to be down at IT Expo next week.
All right, so we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000+ total B2B community members, whether they are selling or buying. On the buying side, we have communication service providers. We have MSPs, which are your managed service providers, your companies that manage the IT for other companies. And you have your enterprise slash medium businesses. And then there's a bunch of, I'd say, industry community insider type folks that are part of the movers and shakers, the next generation leaders of companies. There will be VCs there. There will be virtually the who's who in technology, in B2B technology, will be at the show. And I don't want this to be too long-winded of an intro, but the show started as a voice over IP or communications oriented event. It's evolved into cybersecurity, IoT, a lot of leading edge tech such as 5G, 6G. And more recently at this show, there will be an entire event focused on enterprise metaverse as well as generative AI, which we're really excited about. We made a decision something like 2 weeks ago to have a generative AI expo, and my team just knocked it out of the park. We have, I think, 6 or 7 sessions on generative AI up and running, and I can't wait to go to them. And that will be taking place next week in the Broward County Convention Center in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th of February.
Wow, that's super exciting. It really is a learning opportunity. You know, there's so few opportunities to really get educated these days on our industry. So you're going to meet with, industry experts, industry gurus. There's a tremendous audience there, doing keynotes, and you're going to meet your peers, which is one of the reasons I really like IT Expo is this sort of professional networking, not just looking for your vendor, maybe looking for your next job, your next business partner, your next reseller, and on and on. So, if you're in the Florida area, even, not, jump on Southwest or whatever, come down to Fort Lauderdale. And Andy, you have a couple of sessions. You want to highlight some of your sessions? Give us a sneak peek into what you will be talking about.
We've got 5 different sessions spread over 2 days that Rich and his team have asked me to come back and moderate. I love to moderate because I want to create a lot of controversy and discourse and cross-section of opinions. I've often said that people don't come to a conference to read your PowerPoint. So the very first thing is any session I'm moderating, no PowerPoint. Number two, and this
Hallelujah.
number two, this dates back to the earliest days of IT Expo and Vaughn and Ecom. No selling from the stage. I remember the old days when Jeff Pulver at Vaughn would take a hook and pull people off. And speaking of Jeff, he's going to be joining Rich and you and me and Eric Lanask and Alan Percy up on stage. So I think this may be the very first time where Rich and Jeff have been on the same panel at the same time in the same room, and they're the two luminaries of the whole voice over IP, telecom, next generation communications movement of collaboration. So with Eric's help, we were able to get Rich, and I wrestled Jeff to get down there. You are coming, which is great. Alan Percy. We're going to have a fun discussion about getting visible, and that's going to kick off at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I also have to say one thing. The first group to get all their answers in to the Andy questionnaire was our panel. Everybody else, we're still pulling teeth. I mean, my feeling is if you don't submit the answers, I'll put you on the panel, but I'm not going to ask you any questions. You can sit up there like a, what. So we're going to have a really good panel called Getting Visible. After that, I've got a couple of fun panels that I'm really looking forward to, one of which is all about hybrid communication. I'm doing that with some folks from Zoom and folks from Polycom and a couple other companies. We've got a very interesting panel coming up called Collaboration Today, making your teams feel part of the conversation. And that's going to be with Iago Soto Mata from Cubis, coming all the way from Barcelona in Spain, and Jeff Cubitt from Poly. We're going to have a fun talk about how teams can be part of the conversation, especially now in the idea of a disparate workplace or a hybrid workplace. I mean, let's face it, Rich, when's the last time you went into your office 5 days in a row?
It was approximately the 23rd of February, 2020.
Right.
That was the last time I went in more than actually 2 or 3 times a year. That's the scary thing. I've been in my home office. I built up my home office and I'm just here. Yeah.
And I mean, Evan's probably the same way. You probably work from home. I work from home and I come to WeWork now and then to check out the new cool technology that they have. I'm going to have another panel called How Effective is Your Hybrid Work Strategy and How Can You Make It Better, with Mark Barragan from Zoom. I'm going to talk to him about 15% and what that means with the layoffs. We have Darren Knapp from HP, an announcement that was made when I ran the SkySwitch conference about a year ago, and Yami Schwartz from Schultz are going to be there. And then we've got a couple more coming up. How branded calling can restore consumer and customer trust in voice calling. I'm going to throw a wrinkle into that one. We've got folks from First Orion and TNS, but I'm going to throw a wrinkle in. Did you know that the campaign registry is now making all ITSPs register each and every customer, even for regular SMS or MMS messaging? Kind of caught me by surprise. It's called the campaign registry. Yeah, I was having this conversation with Jeff just a little while ago. And he goes, "What?" So a little concerning. I'm going to try and weave that into the branded calling discussion because, quite honestly, branded messaging is the same thing as a branded call. And then my last panel on Wednesday is the future of experience. And this is all about how do you merge the physical and the digital worlds, or as we like to say, online to offline, offline to online. You have to have that connective tissue that gets into the Web3, it gets into a little bit of the metaverse. It's not about NFTs. It is a little bit about blockchain, smart contracts, but it's also about smart experiences. So we're going to dive into those 5 subjects over Tuesday and Wednesday. And more importantly, we're going to spend a lot of time with a lot of people catching up and actually seeing each other in person now that the pandemic has subsided.
Yeah, I can't remember when I actually saw you, Andy, or Rich, actually. It may have been maybe years. That's kind of shocking to think about. So, Rich, how do you, as an organizer, CEO of IT Expo and TMC, you put together? Because this is just an amazing event. Give us a sneak peek of how the sausage is made here. We got 250 speakers, 300 exhibitors, 10 parallel events. 4 days of fun for us, maybe not as much for you. So how did you pull this off? Getting all these threads, together.
Well, to some degree, we've been doing it for so long that we're fortunate that top speakers and top people with great ideas, luminaries, visionaries, work with us. We have ongoing relationships with them, but we're also looking always at new areas, like we mentioned, enterprise metaverse, 6G, Expo, as well as generative AI. And we work to find the top speakers or the most influential people in those areas, and we bring them together at the show. And, it's a lot of coordination, as you can imagine, because especially I'd say this year, the coordination has been it's been kind of crazy, because I think we're all expecting to go into this massive recession starting January 1, which I don't think has really materialized. And although we've been dealing with a lot of layoffs, right? And so a lot of the companies that are exhibiting, they've got to deal with layoffs. And so it's pushed off their decision making in terms of who they're going to send, when they're going to send the person. Person may not even be part of the organization, right? So that's made it a little bit challenging, more challenging than a normal year. But ultimately, things have come together really well, and we've got a great list of speakers, a great list of exhibiting companies. And I'd say it's probably the most diverse group of exhibitors, from who's who in cybersecurity to telecom to IoT, and virtually all the other important segments of the market that you're going to want to see.
And I'm actually having my own session. I'll do a quick plug for myself on best practices on B2B social media, digital marketing, online digital engagement, content creation, live streaming. We're going to help folks make over their personal, professional pages and profiles. Real 3 hour hands-on workshop, 2 p.m. on the Tuesday. What else are you looking forward to, Andy? I think some of the offsite, evening events are going to be pretty fun. I'm hungry for some socialization as well. What say you? Are we gonna use you as our bar tab for the week? Maybe can you open the wallet and give us some good wine recommendations?
I can always point you to a wine recommendation, but no, the tab is not open. The results of 2 years of COVID has taught me to be a little more frugal in where I'm picking and what I'm spending on. And Florida is not the most wine-friendly state in the country, so you'll be seeing me hanging around the bars. But I'm really interested in your panel and your discussion, because one of the things that happened to me last week is I got an unsolicited phone call. And this is going to hit home because it touches on your former employers who acquired Acme Packet, Evan. I got an unsolicited phone call under the Canned Spam Act, or under the stir shaken stuff, rather, from somebody representing NetSuite. And they were calling me because someone had sent me a message on LinkedIn 2 years ago, and they were following up. And I said, that doesn't give you the right to call me because somebody sent me a message that I obviously thought might have had something to do with a former client who worked with NetSuite. But that wasn't tacit permission or overt permission to call me, let alone 2 years later. So I called the Oracle chief legal officer. I never got a call back. And I said, I would think that a company that sells a session border controller and is deep in the telecom world would have a more prudent approach. And I'm going to be speaking at a panel on this because we have branded calling. And one of my thoughts was I was going to put a big offender, Oracle. I still didn't get a phone call back. So I guess they don't care. And I guess they want to be an offender. But your panel is very important because there's a big transition going on in all of communication. We're going to talk a lot about it with Getting Visible, and you're going to talk about the B2B space and how a story unfolds and how a story gets told. We like to say it's not about the story you tell, it's the story they tell, your legend. But more importantly, it's the backstory. Does a company have a backstory? I mean, how would Oracle think if I put up, a big Oracle red line through it, named them a target, said that they're a bad actor? Well, that's how a legend gets built, and that's how it spreads like wildfire with social media. So what's the facts behind it? So when you look at a story, it's what you say, what they say, but if you don't have the facts to cut it, you don't make it. So B2B business stories are very important to be told. Social media, certainly. You play a big role as an influencer. Emphasis on the big influencer is true. With the many millions of followers you have, Rich has always been an influencer. We recognize that. Back, Rich, when we did the Nokia Blogger Relations Program in 2005, you were part of that. The first ever branded company-sponsored and named social media program that I created for Nokia. So I'm always interested in hearing how that was. And I'll never forget when Mark from iScoot, walked into a meeting, I think at IT Expo, about 2007 or 2008, and turned to me and said, I can't believe how many people are using the Nokia phones. And I said, what, all my bloggers? He goes, no, everybody else who's bought one since. And it was guys like you and Om Malik and Jeff Pulver and Matt Miller, who's now at ZDNet, and Kevin Toffel, who were all part of that evangelism program we created, and not one of them was ever paid a dime. None of them. So
Yeah, it's a
influence,
brave new world. I was actually in San Francisco at an NTT research event, and they actually
right,
brought in a bunch of what I would call kids, but of course,
right.
20 somethings, and each of them had 1 to 2 million followers on TikTok, and brand deals with all the major smartphone manufacturers from Samsung to OnePlus and on and on and on. And you get caught in our mindset of middle-aged thinking here, but you don't realize that there are quote unquote kids out there creating content that generates millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of views. And in our industry, B2B, we have no idea who they are or what they're doing. We just think we're in our own little bubble. So getting outside the bubble, looking at technologies like live streaming, like podcasting, looking at this next generation of platforms, Reels and YouTubers and TikTok is going to be so important, for the brands and even in our industry, as much as we don't like to acknowledge that this world exists.
Well, I always want to know, it's not how many, it's who, is one of the tenets that we've always used in social media. It doesn't matter how many followers you have, it's who are the followers. And then how do those followers convert? So when the Washington Post wrote that our program converted 74% increase in sales, that was the Washington Post attesting to what we did based on stats they were able to assemble. But a lot of this today with large number of influencers or large number of audience, how many of those people really buy the Samsung or the OnePlus phone
Mm,
versus how many buy the iPhone without all of that going on?
mm,
And Apple doesn't push money out unwisely, just like I don't buy wine unwisely. So
mm,
it's the same model around the industry of are you really spending your money in B2B? It's not necessarily getting a large audience. It's always been about getting the right audience. I remember when I was with the Denver Nuggets and we were selling a sponsorship to Nissan, and we eventually got the deal done. The account executive leading it was working on another project, and he said, I've got a project going on in direct marketing. I have to sell bull semen. And I said, well, how do you sell that? He goes, there's 4 people in the United States who buy it. He goes, I have to reach those 4 people. Everybody else who hears about it is irrelevant because they're the only 4 who are buying bull semen. And I've never forgotten that conversation that I had in
And
NTT.
I never will either, Andy. That anecdote was really something
But you get the
special.
impression
But
that you get the understanding that it's about who, not how many.
right, and that's why I like IT Expo, because as much online engagement and discussions as you can have, you can't beat serendipity for just meeting people at an event like IT Expo and in the hallways and at the expo and
I actually have
at the
a good
events.
story there on that, Evan. A lot of times, exhibitors will tell me that when they're talking to a prospect and they'll ask about XYZ, how does it work in such a situation? They're able to just walk right down the hall and connect them with a partner or someone who's had the same exact situation. Whether it's a how do you connect this technology in legal or HR or some other industry specific, and that's probably one of the most important parts of a trade show that we don't even, I think live events don't get credit for, and that is that you can talk to
Mm,
practitioners that have done what you're looking to do and then tell you the pros and cons and the pitfalls ahead of time. That kind of thing is really, really, really difficult to find online, because finding the person who's implemented what you
mm,
want to implement, or the people who had to fix the mess that was created by that implementation, is not easy to do unless they happen to go somewhere and post about it, which doesn't always happen. But in person, you're able to do the Q&A and you're able to learn from the real world experience. And again, it's a unique thing about a live event That's why we're really happy about bringing it together. And then you keep mentioning the informal networking, Evan. Thank you. I should point out that the networking event times, there's an event taking place 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th. There's a welcome reception. Then in the exhibit hall, again, 5 p.m. is another reception. And 5 p.m. that's on Wednesday the 15th. And then on Thursday, there's an event at 8 o'clock at the Wharf, Fort Lauderdale, 8 p.m. networking reception. And make sure you have badges for all of these events. They'll be awesome. I can't wait to get back together with everyone again.
And don't forget
Absolutely.
to download the app. You
Yes,
right,
you have an app.
app it
You
up.
have your
I
own
mean,
social media networking app, which is a fantastic way to open doors. And so, what else can we say? Super excited. We'll see you there from Monday onwards. Andy can't wait to find a good bottle of wine, and we'll go
Can
from
you
there.
switch to mojitos? Andy, switch to mojitos for God's sake. You're there. Just get a top shelf mojito.
I'll probably go dry. It's dry February.
Okay.
Okay. Well, cheers to all of us. Thanks for watching. Happy Friday, and we'll see you in Fort Lauderdale next week. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye-bye.